This is an exciting moment. Eli and Edith Broad are on campus today to celebrate the dedication and opening of the Eli and Edith Broad Art Museum. Today, the Detroit Free Press called the Art Museum a game changer for Michigan State University, the state of Michigan, and for the cause of contemporary art and architecture in Southeast Michigan. And I'll just say that this theme of game changer will go through the rest of my remarks. So let me now introduce Eli Broad. Eli was born in the South Bronx, and his family moved to Detroit. Apparently, he didn't have a lot to do with the decision, but they did. Just at the outset of World War II, he went to the Detroit public schools and graduated from, Detroit Central. See, I'm from California. No. Okay. He went from Detroit Central to Michigan State and studied accounting, became the youngest CPA in the history of Michigan, and graduated with honors in 1954. Eli has commented that he thrived on the culture of Michigan State that encouraged questioning the conventional wisdom. Given his experience at Michigan State, he believes that public land-grant universities are the kinds of institutions that will help the U.S. regain its economic competitiveness through offering a quality education to future business leaders from diverse cultural and economic backgrounds. So after leaving Michigan State, Eli went on to 4 careers. First, accounting. Short. Not much to say. He can say. I won't say much about that. All I can observe is that he discovered his inner strategist. And he went on to look at ways to create new companies and to transform industries. So he went from the accounting profession to founding Kaufman and Broad Homes, which, forgive me, I couldn't come up with another word, reframed home building. But literally, really. Then he noticed that housing is cyclical. Some of you may have noticed that in the past few years yourselves. And bought Sun America Insurance and transformed that company from a 19th century company to a 20th century company. Ultimately was sold to AIG. So the 4th career is venture philanthropy. And I'd like to say that early in his venture philanthropy career, Eli and Edith gave a naming gift to the Broad College, where they created the Eli Broad Graduate School of Management and named the college the Broad College of Business. Eli's particularly interested in the quality of the full-time MBA program and has invested continually in helping us build the stature of that program. So given Eli's background in accounting and his interest in the MBA program, I'd now like to introduce Sanjay Gupta, who graduated with his PhD in accounting from Michigan State University, made his career at Arizona State. Once he proved himself, he came back as chair of accounting, and last summer I appointed him associate dean for the MBA and professional master's programs. Now, Eli and Sanjay are going to talk about Eli's bestseller called The Art of Being Unreasonable. There is poetry involved in the title, but I, alas, do not come from the literary side of my family. I'm the business side. So what I can say is the book is about transformation, quantum change, and discontinuous change. So at this point, please join me in welcoming Eli and Sanjay to this gathering.
Let me add my welcome as well, Eli. It's wonderful to have you here. And it's a great privilege and an honor for all of us to be able to share in what your thoughts are about all sorts of things. And we'll talk about that today. Welcome to all of you. It's great to see a house full of eager people to listen to what Mr. Broad has to say.
It's my pleasure and privilege to be here.
Great. Just a quick idea of, we have Mr. Broad with us for an hour and a half, and we're going to use this time in the following way. For the first hour, we are going to engage in a conversation with him, split roughly about half and half between some questions that I have got for him, and then open it up to the audience for questions. There are microphones that will go on the aisles, so please raise your hand. We'll get a mic to you, and if you are going to be asking the question, say what your name is, which program you're with, and then ask your question. The last 30 minutes are set aside for a book signing that he will be doing at the table over there. We got only 30 minutes, so it's unlikely that everyone can get it signed, but I think we've got a system set up, so it'll be on a first-come, first-served basis. All right. With that, let me dive into some of the questions for you. And the first one is about the book. Of all the things that you could have done with your time, why did you decide to write this book, and why now?
You know, over the years, people have asked me, how did you do this, how did you do that, and so on. And I got tired of trying to answer that, so I said, maybe I ought to write a book. And the publisher didn't want a straight biography. They wanted a how-to book, in effect. So that's how the book came into being. I want to talk about my failures, my successes, and how I looked at things, which is very different from lots of other people. In fact, after I was married several years, my wife gave me a plaque. It had the words of George Bernard Shaw. It said, "The reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable one doesn't. Therefore, all progress comes from unreasonable people." So the title of the book, as you all know, is The Art of Being Unreasonable.
So talk about this word unreasonable. Why do people think you're unreasonable? What is there to be gained from being unreasonable?
Well, there were various ways to characterize the word unreasonable. It's not being unpleasant. It's being challenging, it's questioning, it's thinking, asking questions like why not and so on. And not listening to people say, oh, it hasn't been done before, it's not going to work, etc., etc.
Eli, one of the things that you talked about in this book was that you like to read a lot, and especially newspapers. So you read 4 newspapers a day?
I read 4 newspapers every day. Why? I like to be informed. I always get ideas from reading newspapers. You can't go through 4 papers a day without learning something or getting some new idea, which you can use in your life and your business and your philanthropy.
So which ones do you read? And were you reading them at MSU when you were here?
Not 4 papers a day. Was having too much fun to read 4 papers a day. Probably read about 1 a day.
So you've had phenomenal success in business and commerce. Is there some special attribute or characteristic that you think you possess that allowed you to gain this kind of success?
I think I'm driven. I think I like to lead by example. I've worked pretty hard at it. It was 24/7 in the early years. I feel good about it. And I had the ability to recruit very bright young people and get them to do more than they thought they could do.
So talking about bright young people, I'm told that one of those bright young people is somebody who helped you with this book as well.
She's here.
Swati Pandey is here with us in the audience. Any comments about how did Swati's work help you with this book?
Well, we spent a lot of time together gave her a lot of my thoughts. Swati's a Yale graduate. She unfortunately got laid off the Los Angeles Times. Fortunate for me, she did. And she helped me with the book. She's a great writer, and I thank her for her efforts in collaborating on the book.
One of the things Dean Lenway mentioned was about the companies that you created, and the two that are well known is this Kaufman Broad and Sun America. Why did you not want to go into yet another business after Sun America? Create another company, let's say.
Well, I was more interested in doing something else. I had a short accounting career, gave me a great foundation. Then I became an entrepreneur and created Kaufman Broad Home Corporation, which became a Fortune 500 company. Then we bought, as the dean pointed out, Sun Life Insurance Company of America, a company founded in 1890 in Baltimore, and we changed it from a life insurance company into a retirement savings company. And I figured after almost 50 some odd years that was enough. And I said, there are a lot of other things to do in life. So we, after we sold our company, AIG, and I stayed on for several years as an executive and then on the board, I said, what are the biggest problems facing America? And I concluded it was really K through 12 education. So we're in three areas: K through 12 education, which is a great challenge, scientific and medical research. We've got the Broad Institute partners with Harvard and MIT, which has become probably number one in the world in genomics. We're involved in 3 stem cell centers at 3 California universities, and then the arts. So I'm keeping occupied.
You talked about K through 12 public education as being something that you have been drawn to in a very significant way. In your book, you talk about this K through 12 as a national embarrassment for America. And you actually go on to say, and I quote, "By any measure, America's schools are in a grip of a profound crisis." What is the future of public schools in America? And do you think some kind of privatization is the way to go?
No, privatization isn't the answer. I got involved after seeing what was happening in Japan, China, India, Korea, and certain Northern European nations. This was going back to my days in business, and it became very clear that we were not doing a good job educating our youth. It's a broken system. It's a system that hasn't changed in 150 years. In the last 12 years, we've seen a lot of change. Whether it was in the form of more charter schools, parental choice, then we had No Child Left Behind, which wasn't perfect, but for the first time had accountability and measurement. Then we had Race to the Top during the Obama administration with Secretary Duncan, and that changed the laws in 30 states. And here in Michigan, we're proud to work with Governor Rick Snyder to create something called the Michigan Education Achievement Authority. And its purpose is to take the worst performing schools out of any district and place them in this new system, which has a 210-day school year, 7.5 hours a day, 3 meals a day, use of technology, and frankly, leaving all the contracts and other things behind. So we started with 15 schools and 10,000 students out of Detroit Public Schools, including the high school I went to, Detroit Central and Detroit Mumford. And hopefully that will be a game changer.
You've also thought about applying business principles to this problem of K through 12 education. And in particular, you mentioned this whole concept of leverage, that you're going to leverage what you've learned and some of your expertise in trying to tackle this problem. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I think K through 12 systems are typical. You got 14,000 school boards in America, made up, frankly, all too often of political wannabes, well-meaning parents, people representing an ethnic organization or a labor organization that don't have experience in governing anything, and they're competing with national education ministries that have the brightest people. So we've got to change that, and we've got to make sure more money goes in a classroom. If you look at what happens in efficient systems, 90% of the money goes into the school and the classrooms. And some of our urban school districts, only half or less gets to a classroom. So applying business principles allows you to do more, whether it's in human resources, systems, logistics, and other things.
So thinking about the K through 12 system, one of the issues is, especially for a state like Michigan, that we are tending to lose a lot of our young people. So if we think about the population of Michigan, and this might be true for some of the other Midwestern states too, I mean, over the last 2 decades, our population has hovered quite around 9.5 million to 10 million, a little under 10 million. But the proportion of people ages 18 through 44 has gone down very significantly from roughly 40% of the population down to 33, 34%. So this is a massive youth drain for us. What can a state like Michigan or the other Midwestern states do to sort of retain the youth?
Well, you've got to create new industry. You've got to bring back industry. America's starting to see some resurgence in manufacturing, starting with the auto industry and other industries. Because we've become more competitive, we've got to create jobs. We've got to create things that people, like all of you in this room, are going to find interesting, an opportunity. Some of that's starting to happen. If you go back, 30 years, look what happened to Pittsburgh and how it's come back. I think the same thing's going to happen to Michigan. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's starting to happen.
With your experience in K through 12 again, and the lessons that you've learned from that interaction, are there things that we can learn that can be applied to higher education, say in the university setting?
Well, higher education has a financial system that, in my view, is broken. You can't keep increasing tuition twice the rate of inflation and feed it with student loans which can't be repaid. So the answer is going to be the use of technology, online learning. And as you probably know, Harvard, MIT, University of California, others are starting to teach more and more courses. And the challenge is, how do we educate more students without increasing budgets dramatically? And I think the way to do that is going to be with online learning, blended learning, which takes the best of teaching and the best of technology and marries it. We're going to see more and more of that. You've got Khan Academy, which some of you may be familiar with, which has millions of students throughout the world.
Let's turn to what has been occupying you for the last few years, and that is your love for philanthropy.
Well, I probably spend more time and energy in K-12 education reform, which is a very tough area, because you've got a lot of adult interests that want to maintain the status quo. Then we're involved, as I mentioned, scientific and medical research, which I have no background in, but was blessed with the ability to pick great leadership at the Broad Institute and at the 3 stem cell centers and some other things. Then I've been involved in the arts, which has become a love, and we're building, in addition to a museum we're opening this weekend here at Michigan State, which I'm very proud of. And I'm very excited about the architecture, and I hope if you haven't seen it, I hope you all will see it this weekend. And then we're building another museum in Los Angeles, downtown, next to the Walt Disney Concert Hall by Frank Gehry. That's going to be another exciting piece of architecture. So those things keep me occupied.
So speaking about Los Angeles and California, which you've made your home over the last several years, you say in your book that Los Angeles doesn't have that same spirit when it comes to art or philanthropy as, say, a city like New York.
You know, it's a newer city, and it does not have the traditional philanthropy you'll find in New York, Chicago, Detroit, Minneapolis, and many other, even San Francisco. And then you've got, frankly, an industry, the entertainment and motion picture industry, that sort of keeps themselves, that don't get involved to the extent they should in the community. So it's starting to change, but it's a young city, and hopefully it'll end up with some tradition of philanthropy.
With regard to philanthropy, you make a very interesting observation in your book. Most people, when they think about philanthropy, they think about it being the domain of the rich. It's for the Bill Gates, or the Warren Buffetts, or the Eli Broads of the world. But you go on to say that everyone can be engaged in and be a philanthropist, and it's not just for the rich.
It's not just about giving money. It's giving your energy, giving your thoughts, giving your advice, and being involved in one of many ways. So there are opportunities for everyone in philanthropy. It's not just writing checks. To me, philanthropy is different than charity. Charity is just writing checks. Our idea in philanthropy is to make things better, institutions better, or create new institutions that didn't exist before. And that requires work and energy in addition to financial resources.
Let me change the subject to something else, and this is about leadership. You've been a CEO of 2 Fortune 500 companies. You hired many people over the years, worked with many. How would you characterize or describe your style of leadership? How do you motivate people?
Well, for one, I think I lead by example. Those that have ever seen my office know I do not have a clean desk. There's always piles of papers that are well organized and so on. So, frankly, I'm working all the time in whatever I do. 2, I pick the brightest, youngest people I can. I'll pick bright people every time over people with 20 years experience. And frankly, I get them to do more than they ever thought they could do. And I don't care. I let them make mistakes. I don't want to make the same mistake more than once, but I push them to take risks and do things they didn't think they could do.
Pick up the book again, and a subtitle of this book is Lessons in Unconventional Thinking. I'll pick up on that theme. And one of the lessons that you talk about in your book is that there is value to being second. That's sort of unconventional. A lot of people think about most successes are had if you are first to market. You know, you're first with the idea.
Well, it varies. You know, there are industries where you want to be first. There are industries where you want to be second. Home building was one of them. When we started our French company, there was an American company there before us, Levitt and Sons. So we saw all the mistakes they made and so on, and learned from that. And we were second, and we're still there. Kaufman Broad France is still there, and Levitt's long gone.
Turn your thoughts to MSU, and we'll take you back to your days when you were here at MSU. Can you recall some of your favorite memories from back then? And what might
Look, I got a great education here, but I also had a lot of fun. One of my memories, being this is football season, goes back to September of 1951. The Spartans were playing Notre Dame. The game was ranked even. Notre Dame kicked off, and we returned the ball to the 17-yard line. The first play from scrimmage, which I still visualize, was a trap play by fullback Dick Pannon was his name, ran 83 yards for a touchdown, and we won 35-0. So that was one of my early memories, and that got me more interested in football than I otherwise would have been. And then there were great things on this campus.
Oh.
I remember lots of classes, including getting beat up in a boxing class, amongst other things.
So I understand your love for football continues, but you don't have the
I enjoy
patience.
watching. Pardon?
You don't have the patience to watch a whole game, so you TiVo the stuff?
No, I couldn't spend 3 hours watching a football game. So what I've learned to do is to TiVo a game. And if you TiVo a game and get rid of the commercials and the timeouts and all that, you can watch a game in 1 hour rather than 3 hours. So every Sunday I'll watch 2 professional games in 2 hours.
When's the last Michigan State game you watched?
I watched a Nebraska game. I TiVo'd that.
Fabulous, fabulous.
That was sad. Some people say the officiating wasn't exactly good.
We
know.
won't go there. We won't go there. Just bring back bad memories. About the faculty, you talk about Walter Adams as having had a big impression on you.
He did have a big impression. My minor was in economics. I still remember the textbook, the Samuelson book, with light blue cover. And he had us read something called Beckoning Frontiers by Mariner Eccles, who was the first chairman of the Federal Reserve Board. It was the story of Mariner Eccles, so still have good memories of that. And I learned quite a bit about economics from him. And he was a great teacher. So
I'm going to end our one-on-one time here with a quote from your book that really I liked a lot, and it's inspirational in some sense. You say, life is richer when you live it among the dreamers. And I was reminded of Reverend King's I Have a Dream speech. What do you dream about these days?
Oh, I dream about people that are doing exciting things that are changing the world. Dream about problems in the world. And as I say, I read 4 newspapers a day, so I'm always interested in new and different things.